In the future, the world is divided into two sides, the rich people on the offshore and the poor people on the inland. When the poor people turn 20, they have one chance to pass a selection program called the process. The chosen ones are the 3% and they never return. In the year 104 of the process, Michelle hears a voice from her earpiece telling her the gates to the selection process are open. A huge crowd in the inland is already making their way there. So Michelle meets with her friend Bruna, and they joined the walk. After climbing a very long path up a hill, the participants arrive at a facility where they're disinfected and given clean clothes. Then Ezekiel appears to explain that only 3% of them will be chosen to go to the offshore where the founding couple created the perfect world. He also mentions there are rebel groups that want to destroy the system, but he swears they'll never win. Ezekiel talks directly to some participants, using their names as a form of manipulation, and makes everyone chant words of gratitude for the process. While the candidates are directed to the interview rooms, Ezekiel meets with Alien who he doesn't recognize. She explained she was sent to do a routine evaluation of the process, which was a last-minute decision. After checking her identity, he goes to complain to council member Maya, who reminds him this year's process is important than usual because for the first time in 100 years, someone was murdered offshore. Since Ezekiel chooses who will live there, the community blames him for sending a murderer and other council members want to replace him. After the call is over, Ezekiel puts his head in water until he can't take it anymore. The participants are being asked all kinds of questions. Some are riddles to test intelligence. Others are as more personal questions about things like their hygiene habits or their personal beliefs. A girl is too nervous and can barely put two words together, so she's eliminated on the spot. A boy gives lots of confident answers, but interviewer Denise can tell it's all memorized stuff with no actual personality or originality and kicks the boy out too. The guy protests so much that he has to be dragged out by force. Michelle is asked if she knows anyone who made it through the process and answers her boyfriend, swearing she doesn't want to pass only because of him. However, she still wears the necklace he gave her, so the interviewer dares her to take it off to prove she wants to go offshore for herself. After she does so, the man tells her she did the right thing because her boyfriend's profile says he's dead. Back to Ezekiel, he's called by Kasha because they've caught a member of the rebel group known as the man is getting tortured for information and he reveals one of the selected participants as part of his group, but he doesn't say whom. While the approved candidates move to the next stage, the angry loser jumps off a balcony to self-delete. The facility workers immediately take the body away and tell the selected group not to worry. Next, all the candidates are scanned to check their registration. Joanna notices that Phil has a fake registration, but the scanner approves him and he passes to next test. The candidates are given a pile of blocks in 3 minutes to assemble as many cubes as possible. They expect a minimum of 9 and fewer will result in elimination. When the test begins, many participants just grab a bunch of pieces for themselves. But Michelle notices that Fernando is struggling to reach because of his wheelchair and she blocks over for him. Everyone builds quickly. However, many people start panicking when the time is about to run out. Raphael only has 8. So he steals one from his neighbor and the guy gets eliminated instead. Michelle only has 8 too, but Fernando arranges her 8 cubes into one larger cube to make it 9, so she passes. Joanna also passes because she's built 11 during the lunch break. Everyone judges Raphael for being a cheater. He starts ranting and approaches a big guy to annoy him, causing the man to start beating him up soon. Other candidates join the beating, but Marco feels bad and makes them stop. After Raphael gets up, Joanna points out he took the beating to get sympathy and asks for an alliance, saying that if he betrays her, she'll reveal that he faked his registration in the meantime. Shaquille meets with Denise. He doesn't blame her for the candidate's death, but he still pushes her head in a bowl of water, ignoring Alien's protests. When he takes her out, he explains he does that to himself as a reminder that what they do is life and death. Denise leaves after saying she understands, only to return a moment later to thank Ezekiel for everything. At that moment, Kasha tells Ezekiel they have a lead. Michelle and Bruna are pulled away from lunch and taken to Kasha. She covers their eyes with a black compound and leads them into a room where she removes the compound and tells them about them all. Their intel says this mole lives on the same block as the girls, meaning one of them must be the rebel. The girls swear it's not them, so Kasha gives them 3 minutes to confess or she'll kill them both after Kasha leaves the room. The girls have an argument since they both keep on swearing they aren't a rebel. In the end, they agreed to attack Kasha to escape. Then Michelle starts remembering all the training she received with the rebels. She never had a boyfriend. The necklace had been a random prop for a make-up story that could earn her sympathy. Michelle joined the cause because she wanted revenge on his Akil for killing her brother. When Kasia comes back, Bruno attacks her and immediately gets shot. Michelle tries grabbing Kash's gun, but a sequel arrives and gets it. First, he just pushes Bruno's body off Kasia, who now believes Bruno had been the mole. They asked Michelle to keep the secret and they sent her back to the waiting room. Then Michelle finds a corner to cry in private. Next, the candidates are put through a physical examination when it's Fernando's turn. The scanner detects the wheelchair and rings an alarm, so he's taken away in a lab. A doctor confirms he can't feel anything on his legs and injects a green substance into a bruised area on his back. A glow appears for a few seconds, and after feeling some pain in his back, Fernando is shocked to feel his legs again. The doctor explains this will only last for a few minutes, and to get the full treatment he must pass the process. Fernando gets back on his chair and joins the candidates going to their next test. The room looks like a house containing mannequins in various positions. The participants are told to analyze the scene and figure out what happened to a blue mannequin who appears in distress. While Michelle's group starts looking for clues, they keep hearing the speakers announcing what groups are being eliminated for getting the answer wrong. Michelle notices the mannequins. Vaccine scars, meaning they're from the offshore. After lots of observation, Fernando shares his theory. The hostess inviting some friends for dinner because she wanted to poison the woman her husband was having an affair with. Fernando was proud of his conclusions and wants to press the button to contact the examiner, but Raphael stops him, saying that solution is wrong because the process wouldn't show them adultery and murder happening on the offshore. He thinks the dead mannequin is allergic to silver because everyone is wearing something made of metal except for her. Most of the group brings out objects that confirm the theory, and when they press the button to share it, they're told they're correct. Everyone in Michelle's group passes except for a boy who did nothing to help. During another break, Joanna brings Lucas to the bathroom so they can get dirty inside a stall, not knowing there's another candidate that can hear them. Meanwhile, Alien notices as Akil leaving the building, he's outside gathering some things hidden under rocks to disguise himself. Alien uses the security cameras to spy on him and is surprised to see him in a bad neighborhood posing as a beggar. When he finally realizes the cameras are following him, he runs away, dropping a bunch of food in the process. Moments later, the candidates are divided into groups of 7 and sent to another room. There's a bag with only 6 coins, and after 15 minutes only those holding a coin will make it through. If after 15 minutes they haven't chosen who is out, the whole group will be eliminated. Raphael immediately grabs a coin and announces he's keeping it, so Marco grabs him with great strength and forces him to drop it under threat. They keep all the coins in the bag and start the discussion. However, the argument goes on for a while and they can't reach an agreement. With only 5 minutes left, they decide to draw names using Agata scarf. They make strips and whoever picks the shortest will be out. Joanna is the loser, so everyone else grabs a coin from the bag when the examiner comes by. Yet when Lucas reaches in, he finds the bag empty. It turns out Joanna hit a coin all along, and now she leaves with the winners while he's kicked out. Afterward, all the candidates insert their coins in a machine. Received drinks, except for Joanna, who keeps remembering how men in her neighborhood used to beat her up on the streets. When his sequel comes back, he checks the cameras to find himself and runs the facial recognition software, but it comes up with no match. Then he sticks his face in water. Later, Arlene sends the footage to Matthias, the council member who wants to bring his Akil down. He orders Aline to find out what his Akil. At the same time, Neuron informs Ezekiel that Alan is working for Matthias, so he should be careful for the next test. Candidates are called a group at the time instead of being all tested together. Those left in the waiting room watched the eliminated participants left with wet pants. Denise calls Michelle's group and explains they have to cross the tunnel as a group in 5 minutes inside the tunnel. They find a countdown and flickering lights that make it hard to see. Soon they start hearing voices and Fernando sees himself walking again. It turns out there's gas in the tunnel, making them hallucinate, and they must overcome their paranoia to get out. Soon everyone is frozen in fear except for Joanna, who runs ahead and makes it to the end. However, when she asks to be let out, she's reminded that the whole group must be at the door at the same time. Joanna also keeps hearing voices telling her how horrible she is, but she ignores them and keeps going through the tunnel to push the others toward the door. One by one, Joanna rescues everyone, even dragging Agata by the legs. With only 3 seconds left, they put their hands on the scanner and open the door, which stops the gas at the same time. Afterward, the winning candidates are taken to dorms to spend the night Agata. Still stuck in a panic attack, but the examiner promises it'll wear off soon. Fernando and Michelle chat in private and end up kissing while Joanna rests. She remembers the day she broke into the house of the guys that attacked her to steal a gun in a bag with supplies. On her way out, she was startled by a noise and she shot her gun. To her shock, the noise came from a toy car and she had accidentally killed a young child. In the present, Joanna notices someone moving around and follows the figure to the bathroom. When she looks into a stall, she thinks she sees the dead child. It's actually Agoda who jumps on her to strangle her. Raphael finds them and at first he only watches, but eventually he cuts in and stops Agatha just in time. Meanwhile, Ezekiel gets an alert on the computer and sees a kid sneaking around. He goes to investigate and finds the child in a hallway. His name is Augusto and he's there because he's hungry. After making sure to delete the footage with Augusto's face, Ezekiel takes him to his room to share dinner. It turns out the food Ezekiel had taken to the bad neighborhood had been for this kid. So he explains he won't be able to visit for a while because he's being watched, as Ezekiel gives him a pair of glasses so Augusto can see better. He also gives him a cube to play with. When Alan knocks on his door, Ezekiel hides Augusto before letting her in. She asks why he has 2 plates out and if it's normal for employees to leave the building during the process. But Ezekiel dodges all her questions after she leaves. Ezekiel gets Augusto out of the building and tells him to never come again. Back to Joanna, she remembers the day she asked a woman to give her a fake registration. The implant had to be inserted through surgery and was under the name of the previous owner, so the girl became Joanna to match it. A few hours later, Joanna woke up from the surgery to learn there was a bounty on her head for killing the child. The woman was disappointed in her and kicked her out. In the present, Raphael finds her and sees the scar. He tells her she isn't a bad person and they make their alliance. In the morning, Joanna and Fernando leave the room and discover the way they came through is now blocked by a wall. While Fernando tells the others that they're trapped, Joanna investigates a vent. Marco tries opening a door and pulling some levers by their beds, but nothing happens. They search the area, but there are no employees or food anywhere. Marco discovers a panel on the wall and thinks about the life in his old family home, which makes him realize what the test is. He calls the others over and shows them the lines of numbers on the panel. They need to memorize them and take them to the corresponding room, where they'll pull the levers by matching them to the codes. They must coordinate their movements and do it at the same time to make it work. By moving quickly, the teams pull the levers and successfully activate the vent, which drops some food and water. Unfortunately, the gate isn't open yet and the food is enough for only one person. They argue over who should get it and choose to go alphabetically to be fair, so Agada eats first. Meanwhile, Alien goes to Ezekiel's room and tries using his computer, which requires a fingerprint to access it. She picks a print off the cube puzzle and uses it on the computer, but she gets rejected. This sends an alert to Ezekiel. Arlene continues to search the room until Kasha stops her and takes her away. Ezekiel calls the council and accuses Matthias to send a spy in front of the others. In the meantime, Alan analyzes the print from the cube back to the candidates. Every time they solve a series of numbers, the vent gives them more food and the panel resets with another quiz. The team keeps working together without issues, and eventually everyone eats. So nobody is disqualified. Ezekiel refuses to let everyone pass and decides to make a few changes. The candidates keep on working, but the next 10 times they solve the panel, no food is dropped and the group is getting exhausted. An argument ensues and they decide to go to bed for now, ignoring Marcos. Pleased to keep going, Agada stays to keep staring at the panel, obsessing over the numbers. At that moment a bunch of food falls and the candidates run to get some. As they push each other, Michelle raises her voice to stop them so they can divide the packets fairly. Marco realizes all this food means the test has changed and they need to find a way to get out. The strongest candidates break some beds and use the pieces to try to force the door open. After lots of effort, they manage to open it wide enough to put a metal bar to hold it. However, the bar is starting to bend and everyone worries about getting crushed, so Raphael crosses first. At the end of a corridor, he finds another door that is also locked, so he has to go back and drop the bad news. The working team has finished all their food because of the exhaustion, so Marco guides them to try to get food from the others. When a guy refuses, Marco gets so aggressive that he almost kills him, forcing him to hand over the food. Then Marco guides his group to steal the food from every room, sometimes making some candidates hide in tight spaces to keep order. A flashback shows he comes from a family who always won the process and moved to the offshore after letting a child behind to carry on the legacy. Marco also left a pregnant woman before joining and thinks he's some kind of elite. Fernando sees all this from afar. He moves ahead to warn the other rooms. Joanna keeps searching the area and finds Agata unconscious on the floor, so she takes her shoes, putting them on her hands. Joanna begins to climb through the vent, only to find his Akil waiting at the end, while Michelle, Fernando, and a few others build a barricade. Ezekiel tells Joanna that they did pass the first half of the test, but the point is to teach them the world isn't fair, so they'll show their true colors. The gang continues to go after the food, and Marco hits a woman with a metal bar, which makes even his own group uncomfortable. Raphael realizes the girl is dead and calls Marco out, but when he tries to punch him, the gang stops him. Now Raphael has no choice but to run, and eventually he reaches the barricade. At first, the others don't want to let him in, but after he whispers something in Michelle's ears, she lets him pass. Meanwhile, Ezekiel tells Joanna that the candidates started this and they must end it. He also offers some food, but if she eats it, she'll be eliminated. He wants her to go back in, finish the test, and prove she deserves better. While Marco's gang breaks the first barricade, Joanna goes back and knocks out a guard with a metal bar. Then she brings out the people Marco had isolated and guides them on a counterattack. A huge fight ensues, with the candidates punching and kicking each other all over the place, but Marco's gang still goes down first. Suddenly, Joanna yells to make them stop and tells the people behind the other barricade to come out. An alarm starts ringing and both doors finally open, so the candidates rush to get out. An unconscious Agata, the dead girl, and Marco's gang are left behind. Marco is heavily bleeding and can barely move, but he makes an effort and crawls to the door, which is now closing. He isn't fast enough and the door crushes him. As the group makes their way out of the building, Raphael thinks about the last night with his brother. It turns out Raphael had already tried the process and failed. This year was his brother's turn, so Raphael put him to sleep of alcohol and stole his implant, taking his name as well. Then he told the rebels that he found a way to join the process again on a garden. The participants meet Ezekiel, who says only 9% of candidates get that far. When Ezekiel goes back to the facility, he's confronted by Lynn, who shows him a picture of Augusto she obtained by analyzing the fingerprint. She hasn't reported anything to the council. That and offers two options. If she talks, he would be confined to the recovery and treatment center until he dies, but she will keep the secret if he finishes the year and resigns by naming her as successor. A flashback reveals Ezekiel used to be married to an examiner named Julia. Whenever Ezekiel was too stressed, Julia would gently massage his head in the water one day during the process. Julia eliminated a candidate because she had a kid, but she didn't tell this to the other team members when they were confused by her choice. Ezekiel and Julia lived happily for another year, and when the next process started, Ezekiel asked Julia to be assistant to the leader of the process. When the rebels started a riot in the poor neighborhood, the officer shot a man by accident. Ezekiel, Julia, and Kasha watched it all on the cameras. Noticing a kid looking at the officers from afar after Ezekiel and Kasha left, Julia took a better look at the child and had a breakdown when she noticed it was Augusto. Later, Julia was sent to deal with a candidate that kept complaining because she was unfairly eliminated, and the girl told Julia it was easy for her because she had everything. This made Julia snap and assault the candidate, kicking her until another employee stopped her. Afterward, Ezekiel told her that working in the process may not be for her, so she should return to the offshore, making her think he wanted to get rid of her. Julia insisted she wanted to stay and there was nothing wrong with her. However, when she was alone, she kept looking at a Augusto screenshot. The following year, while Ezekiel was busy with the next process, Julia kept using the computer to try to find Augusto's address. This started to affect her sleep cycle, and Ezekiel became suspicious one night as Ezekiel checked the computer and discovered Julia had watched the same video 127 times. The next morning, Ezekiel told Julia what he discovered and begged her to talk, where he would have to send her to the recovery center after he promised to keep the secret. Julia confessed that Augusto was her son and she felt guilty because she abandoned him to enter the process. She wanted to see him again, but as Ezekiel said, it wasn't possible and she had to wait for the kid to pass the process too. A few days later, Julia watched the video again and finally managed to find Augusto's address, so she decided to leave the facility. Ezekiel noticed and ordered the guards to close the gate, but Julia rolled under it just in time. A desperate Ezekiel went after her, quickly catching her and carrying her. Then he sent her to the recovery center on the offshore. That night, Julia took out the printed screenshot of Augusto and finally gave up. She went to the beach and walked into the water to self-delete. The next day, Ner informed Ezekiel of Julia's death, saying it was the first self-deletion in offshore history. This caused Ezekiel to start putting his head in water later while looking through Julia's stuff. Ezekiel found Augusto's picture, so he dressed as a beggar and went to find him in an old building. He lured Augusto out with food and showed him Julia's ring, saying it had all his mother's memories. He could only have it when he got to the offshore. In the present, Ezekiel learns from there that Alien filed her report with only praise for him. Meanwhile, Michel talks to Raphael in private because he knows she's with the rebels. That's what he whispered to her. He explains his with the cause too, and saw a picture of her at headquarters. They agreed to keep each other secret. Then the candidates are given individual rooms where they find images of themselves with their families. When the images on the screen disappear, the families show up to visit the participants. Fernando's father confesses that the families are brought under a bribe. They'll get paid if they convince the candidates to leave. Fernando is considering giving up after seeing so much violence and death, but his father wants him to stay. An argument ensues, and in the end, the father tells Fernando that if he gives up, he won't have a home to return to because he won't take care of him anymore. Fernando has no choice but choosing to stay. Joanna is an orphan, yet she gets a visitor that knocks her out from behind. When she wakes up, she learns the man came to find her to get the bounty on her head, but now he's pretending to be her dad to get the money. If she doesn't cooperate, he'll kill her for the bounty. Joanna says she'll play along, but when the man unties her, she punches him and tries to leave. However, the door is locked and the guy catches up to her, bringing her down to start strangling her. When Joanna tells him to do it because she wants to go to the offshore, the man lets go and explains he was sent by Ezekiel to test her. They had to make sure she didn't join the process only to escape from the bounty hunters, and she's passed the test. Michelle has no family either, so an examiner explains that she has 30 minutes to choose between the money or the process. While thinking about her brother and Bruno, Michelle pours herself a glass of water and accidentally breaks the box with the money when the examiner returns. He explains the coins aren't real and Michelle informs him she's chosen to stay. Raphael and his mother have a huge argument because she wants him to take the money to help the family, especially after what he did to his brother, but he refuses. In the end, his mother slaps him and leaves. On her way out, she yells that Raphael betrayed his own family. He watches her go and notices a few candidates did choose the money. In the meantime, as Akil brings the cube to Augusto and says goodbye, he won't come back ever again. So from now on, Augusto has to take care of himself. When he returns to the facility, he tells Kasia that Alien is blackmailing him, but doesn't share the details. After the test is over, the remaining candidates are told they'll be summoned individually from now on. While waiting, Fernando visits Michelle and they end up getting 3. When the interviews begin, Joanna is first on the list. However, her quitting test was the replacement for her family test, so she's already passed. Michelle is next. She's given a special outfit and told she has to convince a couple to sign their child up for the process when the time comes. However, when she enters the room, Michelle finds Bruno's parents and Cassie tells her through the earpiece that she must tell them about when his death. After some hesitation, Michelle tells the parents that Bruno died in an accident, causing them to cry. Then Michelle says she's there to apologize and name of the process and still tries to convince them to sign up their other daughter, which makes them very angry. When they try to leave, Michelle confesses her brother died in the process. She cries as she describes how he died in the process and for many years. She hated the system, but when she joined the process, she realized she was doing this so his death wouldn't be in vain. She thinks Bruno's sister could do the same, and the parents agreed to sign her up. Michelle passes her test, and when Kasia asks about the story, she pretends she made it up. Meanwhile, Fernando is challenged to come up with a new test for the process in 30 minutes when the time runs out. He shares his idea candidates need better motivation, so they should be tested without knowing they are. An examiner would come up with a lie to make them choose between the process and something important like a parent dying. This idea allows Fernando to pass. Raphael must project some images on opposite walls at exactly 6 p.m. Since the controllers are at opposite ends of the hall, he must convince another candidate to help him. He tries asking the first guy he sees, but he's been eliminated. Next he goes looking for Joanna, who agrees to help him if he confesses why he faked his registration. She tells him the administration already knows about her and she's been forgiven, so she'll help if his reason had been forgivable too. Raphael refuses to tell her, so he tries Fernando next when Fernando turns him down too. Raphael tells him to do it for Michelle and shares they're both rebels. If Fernando snitches on them, they'll both be killed. Fernando has no choice but to help him, and at 6 p.m., the images successfully appear on the walls at the same time, so Raphael passes as well. When Michelle returns to her room, she retrieves a glass shard from the trash can and uses it to remove a poison capsule from her hip while closing the wound. She remembers how a rebel had given her the capsule, explaining she had to swallow it if she got caught instead of taking it. Michelle brings the capsule with her as she joins the others at dinner. She approaches Ezekiel and thanks him for the process with a hug, which gives her the chance to put the poison in his drink. Before Ezekiel can take a sip, he's approached by the examiners to have a chat in the glasses mix when they finally drink. An examiner ends up poisoned instead, and he collapses on the ground. He's immediately taken to the doctors, but they can't do anything and he dies. The doctors run some tests and confirmed the poison in the guy's blood, so Ezekiel begins reviewing the security footage. Meanwhile, Raphael tells Michelle he saw what she did and that Fernando knows about them. Michelle goes to talk to him, but Fernando assures her he'll keep the secret. He doesn't care about the offshore anymore, he only cares about her. At that moment an alarm rings and the candidates are told they must remain in the hall until further notice. Then Michelle asks Raphael to get rid of her empty capsule. But suddenly Ezekiel arrives with guards, so Raphael can only throw it off the balcony. One by one, the candidates are interrogated in private and Joanna starts to think this is a test. When it's Fernando's turn, he swears he knows nothing, but Ezekiel notices, he's nervous and explains that if Fernando is protecting someone, he'll be considered an accomplice. Michelle is called next and Ezekiel shares a drink with her. He also notices her wound, so she pretends she was mugged before she joined the process as Ezekiel shows her a video of the body and the widow crying over him, but it doesn't break her. She keeps swearing she knows nothing, so she's freed. On her way back, Michelle starts feeling sick. Fernando finds her and helps her calm down. When she considers handing herself in, it seems as Aquila's drink had a truth serum. But thanks to Fernando's help, Michelle stays in the quarter. Afterward, Ezekiel tells the council that Alan did it while the guards arrest her. Ezekiel shows security footage of the moment and poured him a drink. He also shows a video of the rebel they captured a few days ago who pretends Alien has been working for the cause all along. Alan is given a chance to speak and she tries to share the dirt she has on Ezekiel, but Ne has hacked into her files and replaced them with her praising report. Meanwhile, the capture rebel asks Cashew to keep her end of the deal and end things. But instead of killing him, Kasha leaves. The candidates are sent to their rooms and Michelle finds Ezekiel waiting with the capsule. The next morning, all the participants are awakened with messages of congratulations on passing the process. Fernando goes to Michelle's room, but she's missing and her message is jumbled at that moment. Ezekiel tells him Michelle has been eliminated, so Fernando announces he wants to quit. He immediately leaves the building and finds an examiner inside, who informs him they've used his own test to check his motivation and he failed. Fernando freaks out and asks to see Michelle, but the gate closes and locks him out. In the meantime, Michelle is being waterboarded, but she won't talk as Ezekiel tells the guards to leave and admits he and Kasha were suspicious of her from the start. He keeps demanding answers and grabs her hair until she explains she wants him dead because he killed her. However, Ezekiel shows her a video proving that her brother is happily living on the offshore. He explains the rebels lied to recruit people and that he knows this because he used to be one. If Michelle shares information, he'll let her go, but she still refuses to talk, so he leaves her with more videos of her brother afterward. Ezekiel chats with Ne, who now knows about Augusto from Alien's files and announces she won't support Ezekiel anymore. The winners are sent to the garden to go through purification. However, Kasha takes Joanna to an office at the garden. Ezekiel announces that the candidates must get a vaccination that will sterilize them. There are no children on the offshore because heredity was the biggest injustice that sustained the old world. There's only one true path to a superior society, and that's merit, which is evaluated by the process. The winners are given a few minutes to think about it because they can still choose to leave. Raphael watches how most candidates go through purification and after lots of hesitation, he agrees to take the vaccine as well. Ezekiel visits Michelle again after she spent hours watching videos of her brother. He tells her she should get revenge for the actual dead people like Bruna and the poison examiner who were killed by rebel plans. Michelle finally gives in and tells Ezekiel where she was supposed to meet her rebel handler if she got eliminated. Soon, a bunch of guards show up at Michelle's neighborhood and arrest her handler. Pleased by these results, as Ezekiel gives Michelle the vaccine and welcomes her to the offshore, explaining only a person that has been on both sides can be certain of their convictions. She'll have to spend some time in the recovery center first, but her brother, and visit her there. Ezekiel asks if there are other rebel spies, but Michelle says there aren't. Afterward, Ezekiel meets with Joanna because he has a final test for her, saying she has potential to be more than an ordinary citizen. He shows her a live feed of the man that attacked her before she entered the process and gives her the chance to kill him by just pressing a button. Joanna almost does it, but stops herself at the last second, saying she isn't a killer. When Ezekiel calls her a weakling, Joanna laughs and says he's the weak one because he lost all his humanity. Then Joanna leaves the building and finds Fernando. She tells him Michelle won't come, so he agrees to leave with her. They go back to their old neighborhood and Fernando sees his dad but leaves without talking to him. At the facility, Ezekiel keeps thinking about all the deaths and throws a bottle at the water bowl. Before letting the wine fall on his head, Michelle joins the other winners and soon they arrive at the offshore. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
Music licensing reimagined.
In a lovely house in the forest, geologist Fish lives a peaceful life. One morning, he decides to visit the quarry to look for pyrite and ignores a call from his mother on his way out. Moments later, while he's working, a snake suddenly bites his hand before crawling away. Panicking, he takes out his phone only to accidentally drop it down the hill. Next, he uses a knife to gain easier access and sucks the venom. He rushes back to his house and drinks some water before collapsing on the bed. But then he becomes delirious. A few hours later, Ish hasn't moved in. His hand is terribly swollen. He can hear someone knocking on his door in a helicopter outside, but he can't move or talk. In the evening, he crawls out of bed to get more water, but his movements are so clumsy that he spills it, so he has to suck it from the floor. Ish keeps calling for his mom. While on his phone, a text arrives from her saying, "We love you." Many days later, Ish wakes up feeling better and his hand is back to normal. He gets in his car after cleaning it and it takes it a few tries to start. Ish drives to town and is surprised to find the streets empty. Eventually, he stops the car when he discovers a rotting body on the ground. There are military cars everywhere and more dead people inside other vehicles on a road. He reads that there's been a global pandemic and the US government has been suspended. As he freaks out, he gets back in his car and turns on the radio. The news reminds the public the virus is highly contagious and lethal, so everyone must stay inside. When he makes it to his family home, Ish is devastated to discover both his parents are dead. After taking a moment to cry, he buries his parents in the backyard. With a kiss on the forehead is goodbye. After resting in his childhood bed, Ish keeps searching the town and finds dozens of bodies in the church. Then he picks up a bunch of supplies, including a gun, and drives to the bridge, only to find it blocked. He screams in frustration before taking a different road to reach Las Vegas, which is also completely deserted. Searching the buildings is unsuccessful, so Witch decides to take a break in a jacuzzi. Later he goes to a bar to get a drink and drops the glass when he's startled by a voice. These are Milton and Anne, who explains they're immune and got stuck here when it all started. Milton has recorded the announcement on his phone and shows it to Ish, who learns the virus is new and nobody knows where it came from. Vaccines were ineffective and people were starting to panic on the streets. Eventually the government lost control and the virus took over the nation. Suddenly Ish admits that his parents had told him there was a new sickness around, but he hadn't thought it was this serious. Milton and then tell him all nations fell, so probably there are only a handful of survivors like them around the world. And confesses she watched her daughters and husband die on a video call while the duo keeps drinking. Ish leaves to take the elevator only to realize he has nowhere to go and falls asleep on the ground. The next morning he finds and trying on expensive clothes from the store. Ish wonders if being alive matters and says her heart beating doesn't mean she's alive. Then the trio gathers for breakfast. Anish learns Milton's wife died here in the hotel. Ish announces he'll leave soon in an upset and leaves the table. Milton tries to convince us to stay, saying they have food and a generator. As he shows her she's gone, he also reveals he and then have an agreement when food runs out, they'll self-delete. When Ish points out that the country has enough resources to last a decade, Milton asks why anyone would want to live after everything they cared about is gone. Before leaving, Ish asks Anne to come with him. She turns him down but still kisses him, so she has to push her off on his way out. Kashi's 2 gunshots. Furious, Ish drives down the road at dangerous speed and almost hits a dog, but he stops just in time. Seeing this as a sign, he names the dog Lucky and takes him with him. Next, Dish stops at the library and gathers all the books on survival he can find. Not knowing what else to do, Ish returns to his old house to start a new life with Lucky. A year later, Ish is still alive. He keeps himself busy with chores and exercise, but he can feel he's starting to lose it, and sometimes he drives his car in circles. One morning he hears Lucky barking and looks out the window to see smoke in the distance. Ish and Lucky immediately get in the car and drive to town to follow the smoke to a particular house. Emma appears on the roof with a gun, but she puts it down when she explains his situation. She invites him in and tells him she arrived a few days ago. While sharing tea and bread, they get along pretty well, so when it tries to leave, Emma tells him to stay the night. The next morning, Ish convinces her to come live with him so they can keep each other company. While Emma looks around the house, she gets rid of the news he'd hung up when he felt hopeless. Emma notices that the rats have gotten into the pantry, so they go back to town to get supplies. At the store, they have to ignore the horrible stench coming from the bodies and a few rats. Days pass and Emma and Ish find a new routine together. They plant vegetables and go fishing for food in town. Animals appear on the streets because there are no people to stop them. Emma gives us a haircut and he starts building a chicken coop, hoping they can start a farm. Eventually, their relationship turns intimate. When Isha's car runs out of gas, he has to start filling up the tank using other vehicles in town. He also begins building solar panels on top of the house. One morning, he accidentally slips off the roof and falls, hurting his ankle in the process. Emma helps him come inside and takes care of him while admitting she misses having more people around. Later, while he's sleeping, she looks at old pictures of her family and cries. When Ash gets better, he immediately starts building again. Emma announces she's pregnant and he freaks out, hesitant to bring a kid to a post-apocalyptic world. He ends up looking for books on childbirth at the library, where rats are running around too. A few months later, the couple's little farm is going well, with plenty of vegetables and even a few chickens. However, Emma points out she needs protein, so she agrees to go hunting. He finds a bunch of cows and after lots of hesitation, he shoots one as he apologizes. Then he follows a book's instructions to cut it and get the meat, which he takes home in a cooler. Some days later, Ish finally finishes the solar panels in the house's power, which means they can store food in the fridge again. Emma interrupts the happy moment with bad news. She's found a huge rat in the basement. She had to drown it to kill it since their traps aren't big enough for the size. A quick look through the window reveals that hundreds of rats have taken over the town and are now coming to their house. Ish realizes that the trash is attracting the rats, so he rushes outside to burn it all while Emma shoots at the rats that get too close. Unfortunately, Ish has to burn what is left of the cow as well. No matter what they do, the rats keep coming. So the duo runs back inside and starts working on sealing every door, window and hole. Emma also pours lots of bleach into the toilet. A sudden crying noise reveals they forgot Lucky outside and is being bitten by the rats. Ish has no choice but to open the door and quickly grab the dog before running back. It's just a second, but a few rats still manage to get in and Ish tries to open fire. The bullet misses because they're constantly moving, so instead Ish begins killing them all by furiously smashing them with his gun. Afterward, Emma takes care of Lucky's wounds. This experience makes us afraid he may lose Emma during childbirth, so she finally confesses she gave birth to 2 daughters without complications. She lost her entire family on the same day because of the virus. A few months later, the rat infestation is finally under control thanks to the feral cats prowling in the streets. The couple can finally unseal the house and come out again that day. Emma starts feeling contractions and gets ready to give birth. However, she discovers the baby's shoulder is coming out first. Ish wants to find the book that explains how to deal with this, but Emma yells at him and guides him on how to correct the position of the baby until the head is out first. This helps the birth go smoothly, and now they're the proud parents of a healthy baby girl. Feeling hope for the future again, Emma paints their address on a wall in town, inviting survivors to join them. This is seen by a mysterious person in the distance. 6 years since the pandemic started, Ish is driving alone when he accidentally hits a lion. He grabs his gun and gets ready to mercy kill it, but at that moment, he notices someone watching him from the woods. He runs after this person and tries to grab her. So the girl tries to defend herself. Ish steps back and swears he means no harm, explaining he has food and that lives with other survivors. The girl just screams again and runs away. When Ash returns to his truck, he discovers the lion is gone and the girl has been following him. She accepts the apple he offers her and jumps on the back of the truck. Ish takes the girl to his house and it's revealed he and Emma have 2 kids. Now Heather and Alex, they've also been joined by 2 more survivors, Jorge and Maureen. Not to mention Emma is pregnant again. Everyone is friendly toward the new girl, but she still doesn't speak or leave the truck, so she concludes she must have PTSD. That night, the girl sleeps in the truck. The next morning, Maureen brings breakfast for the girl, who is startled and causes her to drop the dish. As the girl grabs her wrist, Marie notices they have the same scars and shows her the ones on her chest. She also offers her hair for her to touch, gaining her trust. Afterward, Maureen shares how she and Jorge arrived here thanks to the sign and convinces the girl to get a bath. Meanwhile, Ish and Jorge go to the woods and discover 2 very rudimentary cabins with graves in the back. Moments later, Maureen goes through the girl's belongings. There are many creepy drawings in a diary and a letter that indicates the girl's name is Evie. Maureen uses the name and the girl responds well to it. She even accepts clean clothes in a room to sleep in. In the evening, Maureen shares the letter with the others. It was written by Evie's mother, who begged the reader to take care of her daughter. When the pandemic started, Evie's father took out his frustrations on her and the mother was sick. So she couldn't protect her. The group agrees to welcome Maureen to their little family. Soon Emma gives birth to a lovely baby boy named Joey. A year later, the group is having a nice day when suddenly the intruder alert goes off. After leaving the kids inside with Maureen, Ish, Emma, and Jorge grab their guns and go investigate. They find an armed woman named Molly and after a little back and forth, everyone agrees to put down their weapons. Molly introduces them to her friends Jean, Ezra, and Rafe and they all agree to go to the house. After more introductions, Maureen realizes Jean is a famous musician. The group comes from Oregon and claims they left because of a flu outbreak. Emma tells them they can stay in the neighboring house but Issue's still suspicious. The next day, everyone gathers to go out. Supplies all the kids must stay back and Issue's very strict. When he explains the rules, Molly asks about medicine but Ish tells her it's all gone so they should stick to food. When they make it to town, there's a buffalo in the street and Ish tells the others to just ignore it. The group splits to look for food, but Molly ignores the rules and goes to the hospital where she finds many disgusting bodies. Jean grabs lots of alcohol and Ezra finds a guitar for her. When the group reunites to leave, they notice Molly is gone. At the hospital, Molly comes across a feral dog and uses a fire extinguisher to scare it away. Then she uses that same extinguisher to break a lock, which gives her access to a backup stash of medicine. When she finally goes back, Ish scolds her for breaking the rules, but he has to shut up, and shows him how much medicine she's found. That night, Jean uses her new guitar to sing for everyone over a bonfire, and Ezra tells a few bad jokes. After everyone goes to bed, Jorge shares his favorite memory with Maureen and they do the dirty for the first time. Meanwhile, Jean gets drunk in the kitchen. The next morning, Molly checks on Jean, who admits she drank a lot because she's trying to terminate her pregnancy. It's obvious she's having a breakdown, but Molly still promises not to tell Ezra. Time passes and the group continues to live peacefully. Jane's baby is born healthy, and soon Maureen has her own child as well. 14 years after the start of the pandemic, everyone is still living together as a big family, and they celebrate Heather's birthday. Ish takes Joey to the library often, hoping to pass on his love. Books one afternoon, Ish and Joey notice that the wind is blowing pretty hard and it begins to rain, so they hurry to return home. They make sure everyone is safe inside only to discover Lucky is missing. Ish goes looking for him and is devastated to discover Lucky has been killed by a fallen tree. Emma soon joins him and they cry together while clinging to the body. The next day, Lucky is buried in the garden. Later, Ishu's watching the kids play when suddenly a mountain lion appears in the bushes. Ish tells the kids to run and jumps in to protect them. So the lion attacks him instead and begins mauling him. After so many years of silence, Evie begins yelling for help. Soon the other adults manage to rescue Ash and rush him to the hospital. Molly is a doctor, so he guides the group to help her with the injuries she has to give her NPR to stabilize him before she starts working on closing up all his wounds. Meanwhile, Emma goes to the woods and when finally finds the lion, she shoots it multiple times as revenge. When Ash finally wakes up, Molly admits she isn't a full doctor, she's just a student that dropped out of college. However, his trusts her knowledge and soon he's able to walk again, so he goes back to his family by the 17th year of the pandemic. Joey has become an excelling fisher. Inish is very proud of him, which makes Alex jealous. Rafe and Heather are old enough to go looking for supplies alone, and while searching houses they're confused by many things from the old world. They get along well and soon they start dating. They eventually both teens are eager to see more of the world, and after some discussion their parents allow them to go. The teens fill a car with supplies. The gun so they can be safe out there. Sometime later, Ezra notices that the plants are abnormally dry for this time of year. In the kitchen, Evie can't get water from the kitchen faucet and gets so nervous that she breaks the handle. A quick trip to the reservoir reveals that the water is gone because the area is going through a drought. The pipes are also rusted and broken because they haven't received any maintenance if it doesn't rain. They only have a week left of water, and that's only if they begin to ration. At that moment, they see two vehicles passing by, so the group rushes back to the house in case these new people are dangerous. Minutes later, Charlie and Perry show up outside the gate with a canteen full of water as a peace offering. Charlie explains his group found a drill outside of Nevada, and since then they've been drilling wells they're willing to share knowledge, so Emma finally opens the gate for them and both groups share a meal together. Ish agrees to exchange all his spare fuel for a well, so after lunch Charlie starts digging. The whole process will take around 72 hours. In the afternoon, Ish and Charlie go hunting together and Ishu's startled when Charlie suddenly shoots behind him just to kill an animal. Charlie explains he's a very good shooter because he's had lots of practice. Not just on deer. Later during dinner, Charlie shows off his scars and stares at Evie, who looks back with a clear discomfort that he notices. The next morning, Ish tells Alex not to help Charlie with the drilling because he doesn't trust the man, but Alex thinks his father is being unfair and ignores him. Ish tries to share his concerns with Emma, who thinks he's just being paranoid. Sometime later, Charlie has a tough time ticking through a layer of rock, but after lots of effort, the drill goes through and the search for water continues. Ish has to watch how his family gets along with Charlie's group to the point they're all singing together. Upset and confused, Ish goes for a walk in the woods to clear his head only to end up getting lost. That evening, Charlie shares his cigarettes with Jean, but she turns down the liquor. Charlie gets rather pushy and only backs off when Jorge comes out of the house. Meanwhile, Emma is worried about her husband and starts getting ready to go looking for him. But at that moment, Ish finally comes back. Emma scolds him for disappearing without a word, and she admits he's worried about what may happen if they find water. The next day, the drill finally goes deep enough and water bursts out of the ground. While everyone celebrates, Ish tells Charlie to take the fuel and leave. But Charlie says he likes this place more than he thought. After the well is properly installed, they throw a party to celebrate. But Ishu's still worried. Emma asks Perry where her group will go next, and Perry says she doesn't know because Charlie really likes it here. Later that night, Ish hears a woman screaming and looks around to discover Charlie coming out of Evie's cottage while his friend Silas is keeping watch. Charlie ignores Ishu's concerns and returns to his RV where Perry is mad at him too. At the same time, Ish goes to the cottage and finds Evie crying because Charlie took advantage of her. Ishu's family gathers to discuss how to deal with Charlie. They don't think they can just send him away because he'll probably come back, so they have no choice but to kill him. An argument ensues. Since some people think it's self-defense while others think it's murder, they decide to vote. Everyone says yes, except for Jorge, who changes his vote when Maureen insists. Afterward, Ish goes looking for Charlie and asks him to leave. When Charlie refuses, the family surrounds him. Anish hits Charlie's head with a hammer. Once Charlie falls, Ish continues to furiously smash his head until he's dead. Ezra has to stop Ish as he loses his mind and keeps repeating "we had to vanish" tries to wash the blood off the hammer, commenting on the irony that the blood belongs to the person who gave them water. Emma comforts Ish and tells him he did what he had to. The next morning, Charlie's body is thrown into the ocean. The family tells Perry that Charlie is gone, but she and her people are allowed to stay. Perry catches on to the real meaning and is actually relieved because she's another of Charlie's victims. Afterward, they informed the rest of the group. Charlie is gone and Silas gets angry, saying Charlie never changed his plans, as Ish group gets their guns ready in case Silas reacts. Corey points out it's a good thing Charlie is gone and the rest of his group backs him up. Silas calls them all cowards and leaves the community. When Alex comes out of the house and asks about Charlie, Ish tells him he's gone because he heard Evie. Alex doesn't take the news very well. At that moment, Silas comes back and asks to stay because he has nowhere else to go, pointing out Ish was the first person brave enough to fight Charlie's control. However, Ish doesn't let him in, saying Silas is at fault too for keeping guard for Charlie instead of warning the family. 20 years after the start of the pandemic, it's clear Earth is healing thanks to the lack of humans. Joey and Corey have been working hard and have managed to build a modified version of Da Vinci's airplane. It needs a few more tweaks, but they hope they can fly it soon. Everyone is excited except for Alex, who is still jealous. In the evening, Joey admits he isn't feeling well. Anish makes a root concoction for him. However, in the middle of the night, Joey goes into his parents' room covered in sweat and suddenly passes out. Ish runs to look for Molly, only to discover Corey and other members are sick. Well, Molly points out this is moving too fast, so it can't be a common cold, and suspects it may be related to the original virus. Ish begins arguing with her over how to proceed, but they get interrupted when Perry arrives saying she's also sick. Soon, the entire household is helping Molly take care of the sick people. Still in denial, Ish takes care of Joey in his room and has a vision of Charlie watching them. As time passes, it spends most of his hours sitting next to Joey, which makes Alex angry because he knows his father wouldn't be as worried if he was the sick one. Sometime later, Heather comes back, but she's alone because Rafe died. She can tell her parents are tired and takes over shift to watch Joey. No matter how many days pass though, Joey doesn't get any better and Ish thinks he's being punished by God for killing. Early getting desperate, Ish decides to cut a hole in the bridge barrier, which is big enough for him in a bicycle. Now he can finally cross the bridge and reach the big city, which is covered in plants. He rushes to the hospital and after breaking a few doors, he finds lots of medicine. During his search, he has a vision of Charlie again and his guilt continues to haunt him. Ish decides to stop at the chapel and ask God to take him instead of Joey. At the house, Heather shares her journey with the others. She and Rafe drove in but didn't find a single person. They got to see the beach and admired its beauty, but towns were unkept and rotten. One day they saw some numbers with an arrow painted on a building. They started to follow them and found the same arrows painted on other buildings, trees, and even rocks, but they never took them anywhere. Eventually they decided to stay a few days on top of a mountain. Suddenly they heard a noise and a strange man appeared in the woods. Heather tried to follow him, but he ran away. When the couple returned to their tent, the man reappeared and grabbed Rafe from behind. Rafe tried to fight him, but the man retaliated by stabbing him with a knife. A furious Heather immediately threw an accident, killing him. Rafe only got to say goodbye, before dying as well. After burying him, Heather started to make her way home on foot because her car broke down. Hearing all this makes Gene start drinking again. As soon as this comes back, he starts getting things ready for a blood transfusion, hoping to pass his immunity to Joey. Heather immediately calms him down and advises him against taking extreme measures too soon. Then she tells her to go to Molly because she's created a new medicine made from your tree. Ish picks up Joey and takes him to Molly, who explains the medicine may take a few days to take effect. Since Joey is burning with fever, Ish gives him a freezing bath. A few days later, everyone is starting to feel better. Molly explains this is a strain of the original virus and she can only treat it because it's weaker. Meanwhile, Corey asks Heather for a description of the man killed Rafe and realizes it was Silas. Now he has to decide if keeping the secret or not. Unfortunately, the medicine doesn't work on Joey, who says his final words to his parents and dies in his bed. Ish doesn't take it well and drives out of the house at great speed, ignoring his family's concerns. He finds the sign Emma painted years ago and covers it up. Then he goes to the library and starts throwing and destroying the books in a fit of fury. At the house they buried Joey with a few more people who couldn't survive the virus either, and they hold a small funeral. Later, Emma finds is still at the library with a match in his hands. She reminds him it was all already gone before Joey, but he still has other children and friends to live for. This convinces him to return to the house, but he still doesn't know how to live again. A few days later, Ish goes on a hike and finds a beautiful view of the perfect sunrise, which shows what the world has become. When he goes back, he tells the kids he got it all wrong. He's been trying to teach them lessons from the old world, but now they live in a different place. Isha announces they don't need him to teach him anymore because the world is their teacher now. A year later, Ish finally forces himself to enter Joey's room. While picking up all the unused things, he discovers Joey's diary. The boy had wanted to find more people, even if Fish didn't agree, and he had started to design a diagram for a radio with its own antenna. Wanting to celebrate his son's legacy, Ish tells the others they have a new project to work on together. Eventually the radio is finished and the antenna is installed on top of the house. The machine does work, but for now, nobody answers. There spends every waking hour trying every single frequency, hoping someone out there eventually will come through. One afternoon, Emma convinces him to take a break and they join a baseball game. The others are playing using random objects from the house. They have an afternoon full of fun, but Heather can't help wondering why a ball game has so many numbers. Ish explains that in the old world, everyone was hung up on statistics, measuring and ranking everything. Hearing this causes Heather to remember the numbers. With the arrow, Anish realizes there are frequency. The group rushes to the radio and tries Heather's numbers. After a few minutes of silence, they finally get an answer. There's a 77-member community less than 100 miles away at what used to be a state park. After some discussion issues, group invites these survivors to join their community. 50 years after the beginning of the pandemic. An old Ish passes his hammer to Heather's oldest son. Ish tells him that his last lesson is that men and women come and go, but the earth abides. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.